Now that we have finished with Jim Cummins' research, it's time to start looking at the research of our second key researcher, whose research supports English learners, and that is the work of Stephen Krashen. Stephen Krashen is a former professor of linguistics at USC. He retired a few years back. He's been a commencement speaker at Laverne's graduation, and I had the honor of introducing him, which was very exciting. And Krashen's work looks at how people go about developing a language. So Cummins' research focused a lot on aspects of being bilingual. Krashen focuses in on language development. So to start off his work, I want you to think about your own language development experience. So hopefully you've all had the opportunity of taking a class or two, or maybe three or four, in another language. Usually in the United States, we start this around high school. So I want you to think back to your high school or college foreign language experience. So think back, did you take 2 semesters of Spanish or 2 years of French? And I want you to think through these three questions. And actually, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and just on a piece of scratch paper, jot down your reactions to these three questions. So, first of all, what do you remember doing in your foreign language class? So, when you were in there, period 4, or when you were in there on Mondays and Wednesdays at the college level, what specific types of things did you do? What kinds of activities did you do? Next, based on that experience, how fluent did you become? Did your foreign language class make you able to go down to Mexico and be able to communicate well? And then, thirdly, how did you feel in that class? If I had a time machine and I could transport you back to your high school Spanish class, is that something you'd be like, yes, that was great, I want to go? Or are you like, no, thank you, I'll pay you to not do that, right? So pause this, just jot down your responses to those three questions. All right, so I've listed some things here that previous students have told me that they remember doing. So let's take a look. Let's look at this first column. So verb conjugations, where you were in Spanish doing like yesterday I went, yesterday he went, yesterday we went, right? And you were conjugating the verbs. Or today I go, today he goes, today we go, today they go, that kind of thing. Drill and kill exercises where maybe you had a sentence that was missing a word that you had to fill in, right? And you did a lot of those. And we call them drill and kill because by the time you're done with the 20th one of those, you're about ready to die, right? Memorizing dialogues. If you had Spanish, hola Paco, ¿qué tal? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y usted? ¿A dónde vas a ir? And oftentimes you might get graded, right? And you'd go to class and your teacher would be like, okay, you're Paco and you're Pablo. And you had to get up and repeat your memorized dialogue. Daily quizzes, oftentimes on vocabulary, or maybe it was the Friday quiz on that chapter that you'd done in the book that day. Vocabulary lists, doing flashcards, memorizing those lists of vocabulary. Filling in worksheets, could be also those fill in the blank types of things. All right, let's look at the second column. Cooking, where maybe you were reading recipes in the target language or the teacher was giving you commands that you had to do. Role playing, so acting out, going to a restaurant, having a menu that you ordered from. Playing games, so it could be being given a word and running up to the board and having to draw that word and have other people guess, or it could be bingo types of things with key terms, having small group conversations, reading books, watching movies, um, could be watching soap operas that were designed to teach the target language. All right, and you might have some additional things to add to that. So let's take it from your foreign language experience to I am gifting you with a 1-year-old to raise, or 1.5-year-old. You can pick the gender. And I want you to look at this list and think as a parent, helping your child develop their language. Which of these activities would you do with your recently inherited child? Think about it. I hope you're saying, I would tend to do these types of things. And I hope that you're not doing these types of things. And I want you to think about why that is. Why are you gravitating towards items on this list? And I hope you're thinking, because these are more natural ways of acquiring language. We think we're singing a song, and I didn't even put that on here. We think we're singing a song, but through that song, you are picking up language, right? Subconsciously, through being read to, through watching movies, through playing games, through commands and doing hands-on activities, you are picking up language. And that is exactly what Krashen says. Krashen was the first one to make the distinction between items on this list and items on that list. And let's take a look at that. Items on this list are what Krashen calls language learning. And language learning is this formal process of being conscious of, all right, I have to memorize these rules. It's a focus on the rules of a language. It's a focus on memorization. And he says this is what we often do in our foreign language classes. But if you go back to thinking about your own language experience, if you were in a class that predominantly focused on these types of things, how did you feel when I said I'd take you back to that class? Chances are it raised your stress level, because these types of activities are very stressful for people when they are trying to develop a new language. On the other side, the activities in this column are what Krashen refers to as language acquisition activities. And he says acquisition is developing a subconscious feel for the language. You're focused on participating in these activities, but through that, you are subconsciously acquiring a language. And if you were fortunate enough to be in a language class where you did a lot of these activities, you probably feel much better about having the opportunity to go back to that class because it was fun. You were actively involved. You were doing things to develop a deeper understanding of language. And Krashen says both of these things are important. There is a space for language learning. But he says it's not very effective if you're just learning a language to be going through these things. You don't have enough understanding or feel for the language to be able to do these. And think about that. Think about if you're just learning Spanish and I'm making you go, yo fui, tú fuiste, él o ella fue, nosotros fuimos. It really isn't a very effective use of your time. I can get you to repeat that after me, but without a deeper understanding of the language. So this is a huge distinction in terms of what we're doing in our classrooms. And Krashen says this is not the natural process of language development. Language acquisition is. So Krashen's work says when we, in our language classes, when we get students who are coming in not fluent in the language in which we're teaching. We should be spending much more time doing activities like this. So Krashen's premise is we are teaching language in a very unnatural way when we focus only on the language learning. And especially at the beginning, we should be doing more activities that focus in on language acquisition. This is a key fundamental thing that guides all the rest of Krashen's work.